Hi, Lauren Grace here, and welcome to the Afterlight Podcast. And I'm joined today by Laila Taylor. Laila is a spiritual and psychic mentor, Akashic reader, intuitive channel, energy healer, and RN who works with women in connecting to their spiritual abilities, soul wisdom, and healing abilities, encouraging women to honor their soul purpose and live authentically with memberships, mentorship, courses, and sessions that guide and embody them to recognize their soul wisdom, the wisdom we all have within. And Laila is joining me again for the second time here on the Afterlight Podcast. And let me just tell you at home, you are in for a treat because I really feel that our last episode, well, I'll talk about that in this show, I'm sure, but I got so much out of it. Laila, it is an absolute pleasure to have you back on the show. Welcome.
Yay, thank you. I'm so glad to be back.
So because this is the second time you've been on the show, we're not going to spend a lot of time going down memory lane because we've already covered a lot of those subjects in our last episode. So for our listener at home, I would strongly recommend you go and check out Laila's first episode with me. I'll put a link to that in the show notes. Today, we're going to be talking about the healing journey. We're going to be talking about empowerment. We're going to be talking about discernment and how you can really start to leverage and capitalize on the power that you have within yourself. Because I think that Laila will agree with me when I say that when we know our own truth and when we can grow in self-love and self-compassion, we can start to show up authentically as the souls we came to be here in the world. So what's going on with you? What sort of happened since we last talked? I remember we had this aha moment together where I mentioned, I was like, I can't wait for the book. And you had this kind of light that shone in your eyes at that mention. Has anything happened with that?
Nothing's happened with that except for those, downloads that you randomly still get where, oh, I would love to do a book and different ideas of how I could publish a book and create a book that's still out there energetically. And I know it will come to fruition someday. But in between now and then, I've really opened up my mentorship. Where I'm working one-on-one with women in their spiritual development, and then some membership. So my Wise Woman membership, which allows people to connect in with a group of women and do kind of like what you would do for a development circle for mediumship, but for Akashic records and psychic and mediumship readings. I find this really helpful because it allows us to see that we can connect in, that we do have these gifts and abilities. And I feel like the more that we get that almost aha of, oh, I can read energy, then allows us to start trusting ourselves even more. Like I can trust what I feel, I can trust what I'm receiving. And that really moves over into a healing capacity.
Yeah, that's so well said. I know that I became aware of my empathic nature when I started this podcast, which was back in 2020 now. And I realized that understanding energy and also understanding how I connect to energy has been a complete game changer. I mean, I was talking to someone on the phone the other day and they swallowed a fly. And then I started choking as well. And then they said, did you swallow a fly too? And I said, no, it's because I'm an empath that I picked up on how. And so, number one, it was a real lesson to me to really start to be able to understand that I don't have to pick up all of that stuff, learn a little bit how to tone it down, but also notice when it's happening.
That's so huge. And I used to
Yeah.
just think I was like I wanted attention my whole life because someone would be sick and then I would feel sick. And I'm like, oh, I'm just like an attention seeker. I must be. But really,
Yeah.
is that we can pick up energy, especially as empaths, so easily that there's no really line between what's me and what's someone else. And so if you're not aware that you're an empathic person, meaning you feel energy of others within your own body and you think it's your own, it can really lead you to feeling dysregulated all the time. And something just as simple as like somebody swallowing a fly, you're talking to them. Why would you have that feeling inside of your throat? Like that's insane. But I've had
Yes.
experiences like that. And now I look back and I go, wow, like how many people are walking around like right now feeling the energy of everyone else and are feeling completely out of control and unaware of
Yeah.
how they actually receive energy. And so something as simple as, well, it's not really simple, but as doing readings and getting into a space with other people, it opens that eye, it opens that perspective and allows you to start going in deeper. And then it's like, well, how do I make it so that that's not running my life where I'm not constantly absorbing everyone else's energy?
Yeah, and that's exactly right. And I think one of the things we also forget is how draining it is, especially when you don't know what's happening. And even when you do know what's happening, you kind of, I don't know about you, but I tend to avoid, even now, sort of sometimes going to the mall. Sometimes I go, oh, it's too much effort. Clear and
Yes.
cleanse later. It's like takes 5 seconds, literally. But my mind sometimes goes, oh, I know it's going to be a draining experience. Do you kind of set up a bit of a shield around yourself, a little bit of a cloak of protection? How do you kind of navigate that? Because we are powerful beyond measure and we just sort of forget. I mean, even when I'm saying that out loud, I kind of cringe at the fact that I do sometimes think that way, because I know I have the capacity to be able to tone it down, or bring my own energy for up closer to myself.
So, what I first started off with was the cloaking around me, but I no longer really do that. As I've continued to move on, I have more adopted the thought of bringing in my higher self. So, imagining my higher self coming in that light beam from the top of my head and filling up my body from the inside out and pushing that out to the edge of my aura. Because if I'm embodied within my own energy, then I don't have to worry about having those holes or that ability for other energy to seep or seek in. So, protection is more like, how embodied am I right now? How present am I right now? I notice when I'm not embodied, when I'm not present, when I haven't connected in on a conscious level of running my own energy, then I'm much more susceptible to holding the energy of others, especially if I go like to the mall or I'm around somebody who's sick or my children are having a bad day. So for me, it's more about anchoring in my own light, pushing it outwards. And then if I'm feeling like overly sensitive, it would be at that point calling in my guardian angel and just imagining I have another buffer of light around me.
Yeah, that's so beautiful. And I guess it all comes down to intention and awareness that this is something that is important to do, because, then you could feel like you swallowed a fly when you haven't, or you feel drained when, there's no
Yeah.
reason to have been feeling like that. Yeah.
Yeah, like, I don't know if I told the story last time of when I had felt like I was having a heart attack. Um, I don't know if I talked about that, but there's a lady across the
I don't
street
think
who
so.
actually was having a cardiac event. But I started to feel like in my home, I was having a heart attack. I called my mom. She was on her way over. I mean, I'm a nurse by background, so I knew all the signs. And while I was waiting for her to come get me to take me to the hospital, which really, you never do that. You should just go and call 911. Like, don't wait for mom to pick you up. But I'm sitting
I
there
just got
just
to pick
looking out
up
my
some at the shop.
yeah. No, time is of the essence. But I was just waiting, looking out the window for her car, and I saw an ambulance. And all of a sudden, all these fire trucks. I'm like, what's going on? My mom called 911. Oh no, like this is so embarrassing. But they actually went across the street and brought her out in a stretcher. She was holding her heart. And as she was driven away, my chest pain went away. And I went, whoa, like that is such a clear sign of, especially if somebody's in a traumatic event or something's happening and someone else's energy is really heightened, then that's really easy for us to pick up. And so that's an extreme example. But if
So
not,
good.
you would think that it's you all the time.
Hmm.
Um, and one thing that I really started to notice as well is when we understand that empaths are really, it's not only it's a gift, it's an ability, but it's really born out of safety. And there's that huge conversation around that. As children, we learned how to be empathic to regulate the environment around us. And so what I started noticing is my ability to absorb other people's energy was also not only, it was in direct correlation to how present I felt like I was in my body and how safe I was in my body. And so when I'm noticing that I'm feeling really affected by everyone else's energy around me, it's not only a reminder to, hey, I need to ground and come back, but also what does my body and my energy need right now to feel safe? Because there's a feeling of being unsafe happening somewhere that I need to check in on, or I wouldn't be absorbing everyone's energy right now. So I use it as a signpost to look deeper within all at the same time.
Wow, goosebumps. Oh, I
Oof,
feel
love
shivers from that.
it.
Yeah, that's really a profound tip because our body is telling us things that our mind, it's funny though, because we don't all know, and we're learning every day, and I'm learning this all the time about how my mind wants to puzzle out something, but my body's got this other wisdom that's going on. And
Yeah.
sometimes it's just excitement or nervousness or anticipation. There could be all of these things that are kind of happening that all of a sudden the mind is trying to compute and understand what's sort of happening. I think, I don't know if I've talked about it before in the show, but I being present is one of the things that I think is one of our biggest jobs as we're here,
Yeah.
to be here in the now moment. I'm sure I've talked about it 1,000 times actually, but I'm very rarely I feel in my body, like actually
Mhm.
in my body. I think sometimes I kind of ride above,
Mhm.
and there are these moments that I have where I go, whoa, I feel my height. It's the best way of
Mm.
saying it. I feel grounded. I feel solid. I feel in my body. And those are the moments that I relish because they just feel so connected to what's happening in the now moment. So one
Yeah.
of the things that I think we struggle with as well as empaths, and I'm actually working on canceling the word struggle, but one of the things that we're learning about as empaths is how to discern when something doesn't belong to us. Is that just practice? Because anxiety can really feel like it belongs to you. Oh, I've had a lot of coffee today. That must be why. Whereas someone we just passed in the street or talked to on the phone has anxiety and now we do. But I think we try to constantly justify it in our minds that it belongs to us. And it's not always clear when it doesn't.
Yeah. And I think the way that I have started to sort this out and understand it with more clarity is at first all I knew was everyone else's energy as my own. So I didn't know myself any different. Once I started to meditate and try to just pay attention to my body and my own energy, what does grounding feel like? How do I clear energy? And it's as simple as the practice of asking, okay, is anyone else's energy in my field right now? And intuitively receiving a yes or a no. And who is it? And where does it live? And what does it feel like? And what color is it? And then sending it down your grounding cord and calling back your light. When you do that, you get a base foundation of what you feel like energetically when you're present and in the moment. And if you don't know what you feel like without everyone else, you're not going to know if you're anxious because you've had too much coffee, or is it because you are in the future thinking about something, or is your partner worried about something. So the way that you would do it is just like you would do a scientific experiment. So I'm very analytical in a lot of ways. I want to reduce the amount of variables. So meditation, getting centered within oneself and going, hey, what do I feel like? And feeling those subtle energy fields after you clear other people's energy. And that's just with visualization and intention. And then setting the intention that as you go throughout your day, I'm going to remain present in my body and I'm going to become aware of when an emotion shifts. So it's
Mm.
kind of just setting that intention to do that and then becoming aware of, hey, I've been caught in this feeling of anger for like an hour and I'm all of a sudden catching it because it's elusive when you're in an emotion. Sometimes you don't catch it. And then it's like, take a second to come into my body again. What is this? Is this mine? Okay, what is it? Where did it come from? What's the story? Why is this anger coming up? And that will help you then start to regulate what you feel like, just a base foundation versus when you have someone else's energy in your field versus when you have your shadow coming up or an energy coming up that wants to be seen that's kind of been triggered a little bit. But you won't know if you don't clear out some of the all the baggage that we're carrying around. And that's done with meditation and intention is how I do it, at least.
Hmm. Hmm. One of the things that I feel that we talked a lot about last time, and I see the theme is coming here, which which is a lot about getting to know yourself.
Yeah.
It's a lot about taking that time to be with yourself and sit with yourself. And I remember
Yeah.
you talked last time about how you had, some pivotal moments in your life where you could see that you were going down a trajectory that you didn't want to go down, and you really got real with yourself and started that healing journey and that healing process. Do you think a lot of people maybe avoid that because they think it's going to be too hard? How do you kind of even start to have that conversation when you're talking about baggage or meditation? And on a side note, just before you answer that question, I wanted to share this with you because I thought you'd appreciate it.
Yeah.
But I did a little meditation a little while ago, and I decided before I went into it, I actually just kind of like decided it, and then I didn't go. This is my plan, and then I'm gonna meditate. It happened, days later or something, where I thought I'd like to have a therapist in my meditation, where I actually sit with a therapist in my meditation, a guide, and I just get to just hang and talk about anything that I feel. Because to me, that feels a lot more comfortable to do that in a meditation space. Anyway, so I go into this meditation and I do these ones from Empower You Radio with this hypnotherapist called Dick Sutphin. Do you know his work at all?
I don't.
He's If you have Empower You Radio, check him out. His last
Okay.
name is Sutphen. He's the best. He's passed now, but he creates in
Okay.
his meditation a lot of space for you to just, be there, as opposed, he kind of guides you in and then he lets you be. Anyway,
Mhm.
so Jesus showed up, and
Mm.
Jesus was my therapist, and we were hanging out in these comfy chairs and we were just, you know, he
Mhm.
was just really just present for me to just get to know myself a little bit better, I think. And I
Yeah.
feel like that's a lot about what you talk about, is getting to know yourself.
Yeah. One, I love when Jesus comes in. I love when Mother Mary
Yeah.
comes in, and
Yeah,
some of
Mother
these
Mary
beautiful
too.
figures
Yeah.
that really are pivotal for so many of us, and can just feel one, just like an immense sense of love and peace when they enter in the room. So I love that you set the intention for a therapist to come in, and what more perfect than Jesus to walk
Yeah.
in.
Yeah.
Um, and your original question was sitting with yourself, right? Like, how do you do that when you don't
Yeah.
know? It was that okay?
Or even
Um,
if you're not comfortable with, because I think that,
yeah.
that's what a lot of people are running around avoiding.
Mhm.
And then they get all inundated with all this stuff and they believe it happened, it's all their stuff. And then it's bringing up things, and very often it's not, it belongs to everyone else. But then, like you said, we have to learn how to process the things that we think or feel in order for us to be able to move forward. Yeah.
Yeah. So it can feel so convoluted at first. I would listen to self help things randomly before I really kind of had my awakening, and I wouldn't know how to dig into it. It just felt so big and so confusing, and it didn't feel like it correlated to my life. Like that, like people who were on the self help journey or a spiritual journey, I didn't understand how I could be a part of that. And so for people, especially, I can speak of this based upon my one-on-one mentorships. When I have some people who are like, I don't do anything spiritual, but I know I need to because I feel
Mm.
so overwhelmed. The first thing is to just acknowledge I feel overwhelmed, like acknowledgement of your current situation. And then the core questions I always like to start with is to get really curious about yourself. I find myself incredibly curious about myself. Why do I act the way I act? Why do I feel upset? What do I like? Why do I like it? What do I believe and why? And I was not able to answer those questions at first. And I went, oh, I don't think I really know how to describe myself if I'm not describing myself in a role. And so that's the first
Ah,
kind of way I like to start with people is, who are you? And why do you like the things you like? And do you really like them? And the things that you're trying to manifest, why are you trying to create them? Is it because you think it will make you happy, or is it because that's truly what your soul gets excited about? And so at first it's just like a few pinpoints of curiosity is how I like to start. Um, and then I move forward with that, with like connecting in, like, what's your main thing that you're struggling with? It's usually an emotion and a feeling that's connected to, and then when they speak about it, I go, okay, let's, like, it's like then going into your body, finding where it feels, where did this start from? What's the deeper story here? What's the fear? What's the lie? Is it true? So I think when it feels so big, the first thing we focus on is being curious and aware and acknowledging that I really don't know anything, but I'm excited to start learning about myself. And then to just start asking yourself questions and being okay in the unknown and journaling and kind of working through. Because the thing is everything you need to learn about yourself is going to come up in an emotion or a feeling at all times. You don't have to go searching for it. It's going to come up at some point. Everything that wants to be seen, everything that's the illusion, everything that separates you from your true self is going to show itself in one way or another. So if you set the intention that I'm going to become incredibly curious about why I react or that emotion I had, you're going to get to the core of it like from one point or another, like all roads lead to Rome, right? You're going to get there at some point.
But what you're talking about is you're saying, start to become the witness of your
Yes.
thoughts, of your emotions, of your feelings, because we
Mhm.
are the soul in this human body. We're not our thoughts. We're not, and so when you can play witness to them, it also creates a little bit of objectivity where it's like, oh, look at me getting so upset about that ridiculous thing.
Yes. I go, isn't that cool? I like get excited. I'm like, oh, that's so interesting. That's super cool. I just got totally triggered and went down a whole fight with this person in my head. My ego jumped in, my victim, personality jumped
Yeah.
in, and
Yes.
they just had a ball there for a while. Oh, so interesting. What was really happening, Laila? What really got you is that you felt like, how dare they say this about you? But deep down, you struggle with worthiness, and you know where this started from. And so I just asked the question, and then I love that part of myself. That's how I like cap it. Is that when I get to the root and I see myself at a certain age, and I feel myself feeling unworthy, and I re-speak to that part of me. Oh, it's okay. We had to act this way. We acted this way because we didn't know how to feel good about ourselves. We had to keep ourselves safe, but we're choosing something different now. So I create a visualization, and then I allow that part to reabsorb within me, like almost like in golden light. So I get curious, and then I break it down, break it down, break it down to the root, and then reshift the whole thing. And that's kind of what I do in the records, or that's what I do in everything. It's like, how can we get to the deeper, the root of the story here? Because that's what's shaking underneath the ground. I might see these different, flowers and everything like that, but underneath the ground, it's the same root that's shaking up, wanting to be seen. So I always want to trigger all the way back down.
Wow, that made me feel so emotional when you said that. I actually had to like take some breaths to not cry.
Yeah,
One of the things that, go ahead.
I was about to say, let's take that moment for just a second. It's like when we feel those big
Yeah, that's
moments,
like,
it's like, okay, I see you. And it's just taking a second and just like holding that energy and just being so compassionate of, wow, that was big when we're talking to ourselves. And then, ooh, okay, and moving forward with that energy. Because sometimes we have these big realizations, we don't give it the compassion and the stage that it needs to just say, wow, that was big. Something came up. Yeah, you got this, and move forward.
so yeah. And
Yeah.
obviously that hit me really deep, because yeah, I think that, a lot of us struggle with that worthiness, and we don't always realize it's there, especially when we work so hard on ourselves, and that there's these granules that are still there of like this child within that just wants
Yeah.
to be loved. One of the things that, and I DM'd you, which is one of the reasons why we set up the second chat, is I was like, I need this girl back on my show now. Is you really helped me in our last show, because one of the questions I'd asked you was, how do you become more compassionate with yourself? How do you become kinder and more loving? And one of the things that you taught me is similar to what you just talked about now, is you just kind of look at, maybe how you react to something. And I think you used the analogy of maybe you like got mad at your children or something, and you go, well, why did I do that? Okay. Again, with the curiosity. Oh, I can see maybe I haven't slept a lot, or I haven't eaten enough, and really kind of understanding that. And I've used that technique in my own life. And I feel that it's been a total game changer. because when I take the time to go, okay, why did I do that certain way? It removes my natural tendency to be the victim and be like, woe is me, and to go, oh, it's all right. I'm all right to own that decision and that outcome because I can see what led me there. And I'll do something differently next time, or I won't if I don't know how to. But understand, I think we have this kind of inflated, at least for me, view of needing to be perfect all of the time, or needing to, not mess up and not disappoint people and not disappoint ourselves. And that's just not realistic. And it's also not how we learn and grow. And some of these experiences we go through, and some of the ones where I've had to kind of help myself figure out why I did a certain thing or said a certain thing and be compassionate with that outcome and myself within that, I wouldn't know how to do that if those things didn't happen, or if I didn't act that way.
Yeah. And I get that question a lot when I'm telling people be compassionate. What does that actually look like? And it's really, it's like you're looking at yourself from that observer point that you speak about. That a point of where I can observe myself, I can be in this body and be aware of multiple different things and connections. And that is where also meditation and connecting to your higher self, connecting in with your guides, allows you to turn around and see yourself from 1,000 different ways. Because if you're just observing yourself through your physical reactions and how you perceive the world, you're not going to be able to understand that higher perspective at all. You're not going to be able to hold on to it, but you have to have multiple points of tension holding that perspective so that you can go up and be here. I can be in the body, but I can also be watching myself through my experience and go, oh, it makes complete sense. You're absolutely fine. You're absolutely perfect. And I heard a quote from Matt Kahn, and he had said,
Love Matt Kahn.
I love him. I was just watching his stuff recently. I was like, oh, this is so great. He said, you aren't going through a spiritual experience, your body is. And I was like, whoa, so we say it, but I hadn't heard it in that way. It's actually your physical body that's going through a spiritual experience. And if you think about it, our nervous system, everything that's, the final manifestation of our etheric template, of our ancestry, of our soul, of our Akashic, is here in physical manifest. And we are showing our bodies how to release the trauma, the pain, the fear that's being shown, showing up in our, emotional reactions, instead of thinking like I used to. And I'll say I'm a spiritual being having a physical experience, but if we can have compassion on the fact that we are in a body that we're teaching how to become more spiritual and more connected, then it kind of also releases that shame and judgment that wants to come in so much when we're working through this compassionate era. So I thought that was really cool too.
I feel like that's really I feel like my brain is going, whoa, like it's computing. Yeah. And then at the same time, I'm going, now you get it. Like I have this higher awareness where I go, right. So because we're a soul and we step into this human body, by the way, the human body is also the mind because it's part of the body. And we step into that and it's like we're in a new car and we're like, all right, so how are we going to make this car? How are we going to tune it? How are we going to take care of it? And then the car is like, I'm still learning how to drive on this terrain. It makes perfect sense. And then hence the mind stuff as well, because the mind's also trying to make sense of what's happening.
Yeah.
So with the meditation, that's where we can get that higher point of view, that higher self, because it's not, it can be really a lot to kind of wrap your head around because our mind's not always going to get it. That's when we have that, that kind of aha awareness where you go, nailed it. But then my brain's trying to compute because we want to believe everything that we think. We want to believe we are our thoughts, we are our mind, when we are not. We are the one that witnesses them.
And there's almost this weird kind of grief it's a bizarre feeling when you actually click into the fact that your thoughts aren't your own. It actually made me feel kind of bizarre to feel that way, or my thoughts aren't me. And
Yeah.
it was like, well, hold on, who am I then? Like, what do you mean my thoughts aren't me? And then the more you go into it, when we start having those repetitive thoughts over and over and over, that's also that signal that, hey, my thoughts are always towards really like victimy things or abandonment things or how dare they things. So that means that deep inside of me, I have a program that's in my, car's whatever engine that's running some sort of, system that's producing those thoughts. And we just don't
Yeah.
think of it that way. The car doesn't know it's a car, but we can
Yeah.
look at it and go, oh, well, you just need to fix this. That's where, you are not only the engineer, you're the auto mechanic, you're the car, you're all of it. So if we can have
Yeah.
multiple different perspectives of our job in this physical world, then we have much more compassion for ourselves. It's just like separating yourself out and turning back around and looking at yourself. And it starts with curiosity.
I think too, when you can reframe things from a curious point of view, you're not looking at it with judgment. You're not looking
Mm.
at it and going, Lauren, why did you do that, you idiot? You're looking at it and going, girl, what's going down right now? Like, or whatever. I always
I know.
say girl to myself.
I did too. I'm like, whoa, I really went on a mental bender right there. I went crazy. And it was like, whoa, what just happened? And I think there's a fear that if we don't shame ourselves and judge ourselves, then we're not going to learn the lesson, or I let myself get
Yeah.
away with it. And then we
Yeah.
see how we also treat other people like that. They did something to me, so I got to ice them out. I got to say something back because they won't learn that they should never do that to me again. So how we treat other people is how we treat ourselves. And so if we can have compassion for ourselves, we can also say when somebody does something towards us, we can also hold compassion for them. You can still hold boundaries, because I have to hold boundaries within my own psyche. Like I have to hold boundaries
Mhm.
within myself. Hey, we're not going to beat ourselves up here. I love you, but we're
Yeah.
not going to internally beat ourselves up. And so
Yeah.
what I think people are wanting to do when they first start in their spiritual journey is to heal the world, to help other people, to be a light unto others. But then they wound themselves and they treat themselves with such like high standards. And this is me too, that really it's almost an illusion. It's inauthentic, because if we can't love ourselves and have compassion and not shame and judge ourselves for not being at a certain point or not doing this or that, or still being very human, then we're going to do it towards other people. And it's going to be triggering when other people don't respond to us the way that we want.
I think that, for me, I can see the evolution, for lack of a better word, of my growing in self-love. And for so long, like so many years, it was all body image issues. And then I feel that within the last 15 years, that has just never been a problem. I kind of like, that's just not even a thing for me now. But
Yeah.
it's those other things, that the wanting to perform at a high level, or feeling, good enough, and wanting to be perfect. And I think that
Yeah.
it's just all ego, really. But if we
Yeah.
can look at things, like you said, from that curiosity point of view, and if people around us are, let's say we're struggling to connect with other people around, we can also look at it in a curiosity point of view in that way as well, as opposed to going, she did or he did. We can almost look at it and go, oh, interesting how that's
Mhm.
unfolding. Do you find that as time goes on, so much stuff seems like bullshit? Where you're
Oh,
like
yeah.
looking around, you're like, that doesn't even matter. Like, I can see people being upset about something. I'm like, that just doesn't
Yeah.
even matter.
Yeah, 100%. And then there's now a new evolution where I can see it as being BS, but then also I'm like, oh, and that's your story and that's your reality. That's how you perceive it. So I used
Yeah.
to get really upset when I'm like, what are you thinking? Like, especially when we get into religion and different political beliefs. I used to get upset when they couldn't be more open, but then I'm being upset about you not being open. And I'm like, oh, well, that's a little bit of a judgment too. So, it's getting to the point where, okay, this is your reality, how you perceive it and see it. And I see it completely differently. And it's like not anchoring my inner world to their inner world is the main thing. There's something
And
you
I think
said.
it's like, oh yeah, you think on that for a second, but it's like
Yeah.
also, I think it's like our desire to kind of see things as right and wrong,
Ooh.
or good or bad, and even for me,
Yes.
if I do something, let's say, and it's not at a high perfect standard, then I go, oh, that was bad. But it's like, no, it's not, it wasn't bad. It was just the way that I did that, or the way that it happened. It's not, there's
Yes.
no bad or good, because we're here, and we're playing this, the game of life. By the way, have you ever read Florence Scovel Shinn's stuff? Do you know her?
No.
Girl, you would love it. I'll send you a couple links. But
Okay.
Florence, and then she passed away, I think in like the 20s, possibly, but Louise Hay was heavily influenced by her. And just her book, she's got like The Game of Life and How to Play It. And it's just so
Mm.
fantastic. She's got so many awesome books, and I really highly recommend her stuff. But that popped in when I was just talking just now, is the game of life and how to play it. It's like, if we look at the game of life with curiosity and
Yes.
joy and ease, and we just don't get so bogged down in the things that, lower our power and our vibration and keep us small. It's almost like under this thumb, like, stay down there, don't rise up, and and
Yes.
that's like us climbing out, being like, but I'm meant for something else. Stay down.
100%. It's the good versus bad thing that you brought up is so, so big because it's so ingrained in us. It's so hard to be neutral in that neutral stance and not think, well, I did really good on this time, but I really didn't do that great this time. So then there's this stark polarity of good versus bad. And if you don't go down deeper into it, you're going to hold your emotions being good versus bad. You're going to hold how you hold a conversation, how good of a mom you are, as a spouse you are. All these kind of things are always going to be good versus bad. And so it's really difficult to be neutral, because then at that point, what is your driving force for most things? If you don't win the good star sticker, the golden star, I
Yeah.
need that good versus bad. Or how do I know how to be? Like, what's making me achieve more? And so when we get into that neutral stance and we see both sides, the shadow and the light, and we see them both as beautiful, then we can start creating and living our lives out of that just sense of art and flow. And this is like what came through me today. And it could look really messy, but that's my perfect art. That's my creation. That's what came through. And then on another day where I feel like I'm really productive, a traditional good day, that's what wanted to flow through me. And so while I'm speaking this, I'm obviously a student of it. It's something I struggle with a lot. Like, if I'm not anchored into my why of why I'm doing things, I will always strive for the good. I will always strive for the check mark of good versus bad. Like, oh, that was good. Or people didn't like that reel, or nobody commented on that, but people love this. So let me make more. And it's like, whoa, am I doing this? Am I doing anything for the likes and the approval, or am I doing it in the neutral stance of, this is my art, this is who I am right now, this is what wants to pour through me and move through me, and I'm so excited to share it with people who are ready to receive it. And then I don't worry about good versus bad, but you have to settle yourself into that seat first, or you are going to be looking for the approval. And I think that's
Yeah.
why we're always kind of seeking for that being good enough worthiness.
Yeah, that's so beautifully put. I remember I read Your Soul's Gift by Rob Schwartz, and it's talking a lot about your pre-birth plan and things like that. And when I read that, it filled me with so much compassion for the roles that everyone's playing around us, people who have, maybe physical disabilities or mental disability, and kind of understanding that, they signed up for that life experience to experience life in that way. And, who am I to say what's good or bad, or, because we're all living our own journey. And I think that we have this innate nature to kind of want to label everything around us instead of almost staying in our lane and going, well, I'm responsible for me. I can't know, Laila, your story, what's meant for you. Something might happen and I might go, oh, that's not good, or that is good, and then there's those stories of I think there was like this story of, let me just try to paraphrase it, but basically there was a man and he won a car. And so everyone's like, oh, wow, you're so lucky that you won this car. And he goes, maybe. And so then he's driving the car and the car gets totaled and he ends up in the hospital with some severe injuries. And so when he's in the hospital, they said, oh my God, if you hadn't won that car, you would never be in
Mhm.
the hospital. What, that must have been a really bad thing. And then he's like, oh, well, maybe,
Yeah.
and then all of a sudden there's a big storm that comes and his house gets blown away and drowned, like flown off the cliff or whatever. And they're like, oh, wow, aren't you lucky that you're in the hospital? Because you would have been in your house before and you would have been flushed out to sea if that had happened. He's like, maybe, there's all
Yeah.
those stories of that. And we just can't always know the journey, the trajectory that people's lives are meant to take. And I think that if we enjoy the ride and learn to practice enjoying the ride, and it's progress, right? It's not perfection,
Yeah.
it's progress. We learn as we grow. And when you and I have these discussions, we take away nuggets and when we go, we
Mhm.
implement them and yeah, thoughts on that? A
Yeah,
lot.
I love that. And one thing that I've been kind of conscious of and aware of is feeling bad for people. And, my
Yeah.
good girl, nice girl, the best friend you could ever have. Oh God, that's so horrible. And what can I do? And I can't believe that happened to you. And you don't deserve that. And I really go deep with people because I would do it for myself. I would, do it for myself and I would do it for others. And then I realized that even that intense, oh my gosh, this is so horrible. I don't know why people treat you like this. You deserve so much better, is a judgment on the situation. Instead of just holding, because I can hold compassion without going and judging the story. Instead of, because I know when people do that for me, when they would be like, oh man, you've been through so much. I can't believe it. There was a little part of me that was like, ooh, that feels good. Look how bad my life is. Look how much I've been struggling. See, this is why I'm so cuckoo. This is why I'm so crazy. This is why I'm
Ah,
this. I've had this story. Look at it. Look what's happening to me. Everyone always does this to me. I'm such a good person. Thank you for telling me. It fed my story. It fed my
right.
need to, and it kept me at that level of thinking of myself very much victim wise. Everyone leaves. I take care of everything. So instead, it's holding deep compassion and being there, but not feeding the story because I don't know whether that's going to take them. And I do that because I can look back 10 years and see how dark I was. And there were people who were, I'm sure, saying things. And I needed that because I wouldn't be here. And so to judge another and where they are or how they decide to lead their life is just another judgment internally. And so it's, hey, this is their soul's journey. And I remember I had a family member who was really struggling with mental health. And I was really like, oh, I got to fix this because if I don't fix this, it means something about me. Right.
Oh,
And I connected in with their higher self, and their higher self was very clear. Who are you to think that you can change this person's path?
oh my God,
They know what they're
goosebumps.
doing. Oh, I had goosebumps. I was kind of like, I was like shook. I was like, oh my goodness, because it was so powerful. And they said, this is a path that we have chosen. Who are you to put your thoughts of this can't
Yeah,
happen and they can't experience this and I got to control this more because if I can't control this, then it means something about me because I feel out of
yeah,
control. I got to control you. And when I saw that, I looked at this person and I said, oh, okay. I'm just going to hold love and compassion. I'm going to hold boundaries. I'm not going to feed the story. I'm not going to be afraid that you're out of control because then I'm afraid that wave is going to take me over. And I realized it was really selfish of me in a lot of ways because I was really afraid of their behavior meaning something and taking me out with my own safety. And so when I realized by connecting into their higher self, and then Mother Mary came in and Jesus came in, and I was able
mm,
to just mourn that connection, they actually had a very quick shift and their life is very different. And they're like, wow, I don't know who I was back then. But I think sometimes when we throw our fear of other people or judgment of other people, it slows them down on their own path. And so it's not that you ignore them or cut them out, but you don't feed the story as much because you know they're going to be okay no matter what. I started saying, whatever happens, if they're still here tomorrow or they're not here tomorrow, they go through this for another 10 years, or they go through it through another 2 years. I hold deep compassion for you, but you're going to be okay. And I know that.
Yeah,
And that gives them
yeah.
back their strength.
Wow, that's so
Yeah.
good. And because everything really is in divine protection is or in divine guidance and everything is just like divine timing. It's all good. It's all
Yes.
good. But our thoughts try to tell us a different story.
Oh,
Whereas
yeah.
we know that when we shape shift into the next, when we pass it from this vehicle and we move on to something else, it's like exciting times, You're right.
Right.
What's next, right? It's
Yes.
yeah, but I think that we have a lot of kind of guilt around and societal guilt as well. And I've felt this before how yeah, but if you're not occupied and concerned about all of these other situations or people, who are you? You're
Ooh,
heartless, you know?
yes.
I don't read the news, for example, because I'm like, number one, I don't want that energy. Number two, I don't like listening or reading things that are in my mind that I have to now work hard at to delete because,
Yes.
you know,
Yeah.
I
That's a
just
real
don't want that.
difficult and sticky subject. And I just go, I'm just going to stay in my own lane.
Yeah.
And there's going to be 1,000 people saying, you're good if you do this. You're not good if you don't do this. You will always be pulled by someone else. So it's always just saying, like, what fills me up? How can I help? How can I help in the capacity that I'm most aligned with? And that's how I pour out. But I mean, my gosh, if you got really deep into it, you would always feel like you're not enough, like you're not doing enough, you're not helping enough, you're not doing this enough. Or,
Mm.
yeah, it's a lot.
Whereas understanding that when we don't occupy ourselves with things that don't concern us, and we
Mm-hmm.
instead turn that attention inwards and we grow
Mm-hmm.
in love and compassion and curiosity and understanding for ourselves, what happens is we actually shine our light so much brighter. And when we
Yeah.
do that, we're present and we give other people the opportunity to be the same. And I'm
Yeah.
sure you've seen experiences or had experiences in your life where you were just fully present and with someone, and that person worked out a story or figured something
Yes.
out or had peace for a moment. And it's because you were
Yeah.
there.
I wasn't worried about the performance. I wasn't worried about saying the perfect thing. I wasn't worried of, am I actually hearing this or am I making this up? I was in flow and I was present. And we've all had those moments where we're with friends and we're like just flowing. And it's like, whoa, where did that come from? It's
Yeah.
you weren't concerned with, I don't know, or I'm not good enough, or who am I to say this? You just allowed that
Yeah.
presence of God to flow through you. And you can change someone's entire experience just by being that present, but you can't set that up. It's got to happen organically, and the only way to
Yeah.
allow it organically is for you to have already created the framework for it to flow through you and to feel, because there's so many people who could just be such healers in this world if they allowed themselves just to flow more and didn't stop themselves so much and go, well, who am I to say this? And just allowed their
Mm.
natural energy, they could really hold so much space for other people to have a moment of realization. Because like the saying goes, like, you can't heal someone else, you can only really hold the space. Everyone heals their own self, but you hold the space and energy for it. And we heal ourselves. Then so this is how I look at it. I heal me, or I'm healing me. It's going to be always a progression. It will never be done. But my children see this and they get the choice of how they allow my energy to affect them, how they talk to themselves, how they shame themselves or judge themselves. And then it goes on and on and on and on. We break down these years of ancestry that have lived in war and famine and just strife and judgment and really hard lives. And we start breaking that down. And that's how we change the world. It's not through just one flash, like all of a sudden, 2025, the whole world's going to change. We're going to be in a new world. Like all you guys are going to be left. It's a gradual evolution that's going to happen by being really honest, compassionate, and aware of who you are, not by seeking out other people.
Mm, that's so beautiful. I want to share this little story with you.
Yeah.
So I was spiraling about something because that's where I tend to default is judgment, or if I've said something and I come in and I go, yeah, but I was in flow with that. It's like, no, but my judgment voice always looks at the worst case scenario sometimes, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I'm in this like spiraling, and then Gabby Bernstein's teachings popped in, and I was like, I'm gonna see this situation through the eyes of love. And I
Mm-hmm.
heard this like higher voice, and I went, okay, I'm going to see the situation through the eyes of love. And I just kept telling myself that over and over and over. And all of a sudden it was like, I went, flip. It's almost like I put on these glasses and I was like, oh, damn, what's happening? And then all of a sudden from my right shoulder, this is the only time I've experienced it, this like this. And that's why I wanted to bring it up, because I'm just curious what you think. But from my right shoulder all the way to the top of my head, all in this area was static, like I've never felt before. Not on this side, right side, masculine side, but
Yeah.
the God, and I just felt like this, and I went, whoa, and the whole side felt numb and staticky, and I was like, okay, source, I got it. Like I got it. We can kind of tone that down for a minute, but it was
Wow.
complete validation in a way that I'd never felt it that intensely. Because normally when I get truth, it's like goosebumps and, or excitement
Yes.
or something, but that was next level. Have you ever had anything
Um,
like that happen before, or any thoughts on that?
you know, that building of energy like that. Well, I typically I will feel it in my heart and will expand outwards. It almost feels like you could even taken it and like taken that ball of energy and pushed it out with a thought or feeling to something. It just felt like you were
Oh,
building energy that could be pushed out through your right hand, whereas your sending hand,
oh,
and
like,
send out energy. Yeah, send out a ball of light. It almost feels like
yeah.
healing energy that was coming in. And on the right side is really where we send out energy. And so I
Yes. Okay.
have how it happens for me is since I can see energy, especially at night, I'll bring in and I'll create a ball and it'll be this big blue ball of energy. And then I'll push it down. And one time I let it come into my left hand. My right hand was underneath my husband's back when he was sleeping. And it went all the way through. It felt very bizarre, like you're about to sneeze, feeling like this buildup of energy, and it went all the way to my right hand, and it shocked him, and he woke up and like jumped up and looked at me. I was like, "Oh, I'm so sorry." I think sometimes we build these energy balls that we don't see, and then we can use them, or they'll just disperse
Wow.
out. But it seems like you were building energy.
That is so helpful. And I love the lesson there. I feel like my guides are like, yes, because when you see through things through the eyes of love, or feel through the eyes, you're not feeling through the
Mm-hmm.
eyes of love, but when you're
Yeah.
having that feeling, that's what the real stuff is.
Mm-hmm.
It's that love. It's that, I remember one time I was in meditation, and I don't know if it was like an earth healing meditation or something like that. But anyway, I was working with the earth and I saw the planet in front of me. And I
Mm,
went, oh, I just love you so much. And in my meditation, I went and I just hugged the planets. And then all of a sudden it went boom, and it went, and the whole thing was just crystalline, and it was
mm.
light and golden and crystal. And I always had that vision in my mind since then. That was, I think, probably 15, 20 years ago that
Oh,
happened.
wow.
And I remember thinking, wow. And it was that transformation. So I love
Yes.
that you're talking about, and I think that hopefully that's a lesson for our listener at home, is when we
Mhm.
have this energy, is to go, okay, well, what am I going to do with that? I mean, I could have easily maybe shifted it and gone, ooh, I'm just going to bathe in that. But I could have just
Mhm.
gone in my visualization. I could have gone, I'm going to send that right into the earth, and I'm just going to
Oh,
send that
yeah.
love. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. And you can really do that. Yeah, that visualization of calling that in, or just putting your hands apart and creating that visual of like an orb of light. And then whatever you're like moving through or wanting to heal and transmute, sending good thoughts or manifestations or affirmations, and then seeing that light go into your heart space and just
Mm.
allowing it to disperse through your physical body is something that it's a practice that we could do and is so powerful, and we just don't do enough. but it really opens up the heart when we create those visualizations and do a deposit into our heart bank.
I'm so glad you said that. That's making me think of, I'll have to show you when we're done recording, or I'll send you the link, but there's this book called The Keepers of the Light Codes. And I
Okay.
interviewed a woman on my show named Rhiannon, and she wrote this book. And it's actually a note to self for me to bring it back into my life. But she talks all about the heart space in that book. And from the very first page, Laila, I would love for you to read. I would love to hear what you think. For the very
Mhm.
first page, I went, oh, I'm home. You know, when you
Yes.
read those books and you go, oh, wow, oh, I'm home.
Yes.
And basically what the thing is that there's these lessons, all channeled material, these lessons, and then there's these activations that you take, and you take the
Yes.
activations in order. And I'm actually a little bit, I'll tell you, I haven't finished the activations. I don't know. I guess I had a hesitation about keep going. So
Yeah.
this is like a note to self. This is where I bring
Hmm.
myself back in check. But there's this opportunity that in one of the activations to go into the heart and to kind of look around. And even if we just kind of do a meditation, you could just do a breathing and then you visualize going into your heart. And you can imagine a cave there, and you might have like a
Oh, yeah.
beautiful light, and you go in and you're like, oh, what part needs to be illuminated or, like
Yes.
healed a little bit. And oh, thank you so much. I just feel like so in tune right now. Thank you for
My
holding that
heart.
space for me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, my heart feels so huge right now. Yes.
Yeah, and just sending that love in the cavern, in the cave of your heart, and just going in.
Yes.
And I remember one of my teachers, Bernadette, she always said, when you've got anxiety, when I'll just breathe it in through the heart, it'll be transmuted through the heart. It's all through. But
Mhm.
I didn't understand it because I was trying to intellectualize the heart versus
Yes.
going, oh, the heart is the key. And funny enough, I actually have a tattoo of my heart right there.
Oh,
So
I
it's
love
like
that.
20 years ago, I was subconsciously
Mhm.
trying to tell myself what was going on.
Yes. Yes, the heart is the key. The heart is how I teach my Akashic records. The heart is how I teach how to do readings, how to channel your guides, how to do it all,
Yeah.
because they will flip into their mental and they'll be up here and they'll be trying to receive messages from their higher self, from their guides, from their angels. And like, I don't know. I'm like, no, you're in your mind. You have to. You have to anchor it into your heart, because your third eye, your mind can see 1,000 different timelines. You can see so many different things. It doesn't mean that it's anchored in truth. So you have to anchor everything into the heart, because the heart is the truth detector. And so if you're pulling through your heart, then at that point you are aligned with your higher self and with truth. And that is where you receive messages. That's how you can receive visions and receive downloads and information. That's where we heal the inner child in the heart. We absorb her back through the heart. Everything like that goes through the heart. And then it's almost like I see it go push in, and then I see it disperse through my veins, this golden light
Oh,
through
beautiful.
my vessels. It's like, boop, now it's all through me. But the heart is the anchor to everything. And I think that's people are so focused on the third eye. It's like, no, get into your heart and feel that expansion. And we can,
Yeah.
the one way I like starting people with that is with their guardian angels. Your guardian angel, meeting them will connect you to your heart space, and it helps you hold that emotional ground to start connecting more into that heart centered love.
Oh, I just could listen to you speak for hours. One of the things that you're making me think about as well. Number one, I had this guest on my show a little while ago, and Sheila Marie. She was a fabulous guest, forensic medium. And she was
Ooh.
teaching. She was talking about how you want to watch out when you say "I think," because the minute you get into
Mm-hmm.
think, that's where you. And I went, "Oh yeah," and so, and then
Mm-hmm.
for the whole conversation, I kept hearing myself go, I think, da, 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 and I'm going, oh
I
no,
know.
delete that. But when you were just talking just now, I had this aha moment where I went, okay, wait a minute. So sometimes we have emotions in our body and they're
Mm,
caused by thoughts, which may or may not be
yes.
true, which may or may not belong to us. And I think sometimes, there I go. And
Mm,
sometimes what happens is that we believe that thought, that feeling is giving us an indication of making a decision or some kind of truth. But what actually is the heart. If you
yes.
can you, for example, if you're dealing with a situation, let's say you feel a little bit nervous or you're unsure, anxiety around it, can you bring it into the heart for a moment and see how that
Ooh.
feels? because
Yep.
sometimes the heart will pound and set your whole body on fire and you go, whoa, it was just
Mhm.
fear that was causing nervousness or anxiety. It
Yes.
wasn't because it wasn't a situation for me. Because
Yes.
sometimes on the other side of fear is this miracle waiting to happen. And I coined that from Kyle Gray, who said that, and I love it.
Yeah.
That's exactly. And then, but then what happens is we go, oh, I feel nervousness or anxiety. It must be a no. I'm just going to say no to that. And it's going, no. The thought
Mhm.
triggered a feeling based on all of, the root thing that we're going back to what we were
Past.
talking about
Mhm.
earlier, past
Mhm.
experiences in this life or other lives, because some of us have been
Mhm.
here many times. You can relate, I
Mhm.
know. And then instead of going, wait a minute, I hear that. Thank you. What would love do?
Yeah.
What would love
Well,
do? And
yeah.
love would give it a go,
Yeah,
maybe.
your heart would tell you something else. It's like that perfect triangle. You're going to have, at first you think it's linear, it's the feeling to the thought, but really we need that. We need that trinity. We need those 3 points. We need that feeling to the thought to the truth so that we can anchor ourselves and see, oh, I see all of it, but I'm anchored in the heart as the strongest point. And that's that nice foundation, that strong shape of that triangle. And when you can go into the heart and just say, like, is this true? Is it true? Your heart will always answer in truth. And if you find yourself flipping up into your head, nope, your head's there, bring it back down. So when I say take a second and have compassion, or I tell people to become aware and go, oh, I'm feeling an emotion, I'm teaching people how to work from their heart, breathe, feel this. And sometimes it's really hard to hold awareness in the heart. So it's like, okay, put all your attention on your big toe. Okay, you're there. Put your attention on your pinky. You're there. Put your intention where your heart is. You're there. And it's getting used to holding tension there and awareness here while I'm speaking so that your heart will filter out any of that BS that we were talking about. Because the truth filtered with fear will feel like all of a sudden I'm constricting and this isn't for me and it's anxiety and maybe this is a warning sign. But when we filter it through the heart, you're right, it comes through just pure truth. It's, oh, this is amazing. It's like, okay, I can go boldly into this. I
I can
feel
go
fear because
boldly.
this is something new, but I can go boldly from my heart because my heart is my North Star. It's what points me in my direction.
And because there's no right and wrong, I'm not going to mess it
No,
up.
can't. Not if you're anchored in your heart.
I needed to create space there for that to just drop because
Ooh,
I
yeah,
feel like that's the secret, isn't it? That's
it is.
the whole, that's the
The whole
whole
thing.
thing.
It's the most simplest and most difficult thing for us to do.
Mhm. Mhm.
And it has to be experienced. It can't be intellectualized. If you are just listening to this and trying to understand it, you're not going to get it. You have to go into the heart and feel it and ask your heart for its own wisdom. We're thinking too much of from our emotions, from our thoughts, and we're not in the heart. And so we're going to be led, I'm seeing like a storm, always being led astray, looking for another ship to lead us or a landmass to lead us. And we're going to end up where we think we want to land there, but we don't. You want that North Star, which is only in your heart. That's how you can really anchor into your soul purpose and your truth and your mission, because your North Star may have you going all different directions. But as long as you're anchored there, you're not going to feel as though, oh, I'm following this person because this is what I think success looks like. Or if I can just get this house and dock here at this island, this is going to be success, when really that's not the truth of it. So you're so right. Anchoring into the heart, that's how we heal everything. That's how we feel aligned. That's how we feel authentic. That's how we
Yeah.
connect into the present. That's how we filter what we would judge ourselves through love. And we're not being taught how to do that because it feels like, oh, yeah, that's cute. Self love, focus on the heart. But no, it's one of the biggest strengths for us to have.
Oh, it's so good. And I know one of the things that's really helped me with that, AKA because I reside above my body,
Mm-hmm.
is feeling the love I have for my partner, like just
Mm-hmm.
feeling and sitting in that, or feeling the love I have for my pets or my family or my friends. And
Mm-hmm.
sometimes I use that as a trigger to get into the heart space because when we
Yeah.
can feel that unconditional love, all of a sudden we're like, oh, I'm in my body now. I'm
Yeah.
feeling that. And I will say that since being more compassionate with myself from your teaching and all the work I've been doing over the years, I feel it's all coming together. And I
Mhm.
am growing in so much love for myself that I just sometimes you just go, wow, I just love myself because I can
Mhm.
see what I'm doing here. I'm a good
100.
person. I'm doing the
Yeah.
best I can. That's enough. You know,
Yeah.
I get it with the good, I guess, but you know what I'm saying, I guess, because sometimes we
Yeah.
still want to intellectualize things. But even if I don't, I can feel my own heart. And when I feel
Yes.
my own heart, I can see the beauty within that. And I don't have to label it
Mhm.
or say anything else about it because it's so deep. And like you said, you have to feel that to know. You can't,
Mhm.
like I was trying for years. Oh yeah, it's through the heart, you know.
What does that mean?
No.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. What does that mean?
Yeah. And the statement that you said of your partner and family members, while that does get us into the heart and it helps us to feel that expansive love, what I see happen often is it's like a vitamin that gives you what you need, but you also we have to learn how to create it for ourselves, because what if that relationship changes? And what I see happen is we feel that
Right.
expansive love and then the relationship changes, or our children act a certain way or don't want to speak to you. And it's like, whoa, my source that was lighting up that fire in my heart, it's
Mm,
kind of cold right now. So it's receiving and also making sure that we're equally focusing on how can I feel love for myself just because I am. That's what happens when we really connect into our soul, allow that energy to move through us and feel that expansiveness breathe through our heart, and just remember who we are and being compassionate with ourselves. But it's like getting fed meals, and then all of a sudden the cook goes away and it's like, oh, I don't know how to feed myself. Oh, I need
I
this, doesn't
love that
feel good.
you Yeah, I love that you
Yeah.
reframe that way. I think, and
Hmm.
I 100% agree with you. And I think
Hmm.
that, if we can take our meals, all the while
Yes.
aware that we need to be able to cook our own meals, I think it
Yes.
helps us to kind of learn how that feels.
Yes. How can I internally love myself if my external world looks horrible? And the view I always get is this picture of Jesus walking through, and like there's a storm happening, but he's around him is just peace, but there's a storm happening. And so when storms happen around us, can we hold that sense of light and truth and love, which really is our worthiness, our sense of feeling safe, all of that stuff wrapped up in love, even if there's a storm around. And so it's ensuring that we have that anchored into us, so that when the external love that we send and receive is gone, are we going to be, and now I'm seeing somebody like parched and like going like this, we're going to be desperate. Or what I found myself is controlling how other people perceive me in relationships, because
Mm,
that's my source of love right now. That's how I feel expansive. So if you go away, that's a problem. So now I got to control a little more. And then I control me a little more. And then I judge me a little more. Then I judge you and I'm passive aggressive. And then it's a whole thing. So it's learning that we can eat and take care of ourselves, take care of our heart at the same time is so big. So, so
yes.
big.
Yes. And nothing outside of us will ever fill that up.
Mm-mm.
That's important to know. I brought it up because I think that if you don't know how to get started, it can be a
Yes.
way.
What
But
that
you're right,
feels
like
like.
you're saying that. Yeah, exactly what that feels
Yes.
like. Mhm.
Yeah.
Especially
Cause
if you're a lot in here, getting
yeah.
into the body, anchoring into the body, like you said, the toe, finger, and
Yes.
then into it can
But
sometimes
we need
take
a
a
point
minute.
of reference. We need a point of reference. And so the point of reference of thinking of love that you have for your family members and love that you have for your pets, that gives you a point of reference. Go, oh, I see what that kind of feels like. Oh, interesting. Now, how do I make myself feel that way just by myself? But a point of reference is always needed, or it's like having children or being in, you can speak about it, but unless you experience it, you don't understand it. So a point of reference is always important.
Mhm, mhm.
Yeah.
Oh, wow. Well, we're over time. I mean, it doesn't matter. I was watching the clock for your sake because I could
Oh no.
stay for ages.
I'm just sitting here talking. Yeah, you're good. I love this. This always,
Me too.
what's so interesting when you are aligned to your work, just like you are, like this just like feeds me. It just gives me a medium to be able to speak about my experiences and how I'm moving through life. And if it resonates with certain people, then it resonates with them. But I think anytime we filter that through as and allow ourselves to flow, and since you're doing it so often, since you do a podcast and you work with people as well, it re-energizes. Like, I'm seeing something dehydrated, like pushing back up and getting fluffy again. It's like it fills me back up. So I love it.
Well, I love talking to you. Thank you for saying that. And I feel the same about you. And I think one of the cool things about when we connect is we're really here together and we hold that space together. And hopefully our listener at home witnessed that, because what
Yeah.
happens is this conversation and they didn't really know, but we kind of didn't know what we were going to talk about off the top. I rattled off a few things, but we were really just happy to be used by Source here. And I
Yeah.
think it worked really well, and bringing it to the subject of the heart and love and
Mhm.
is something we're both really passionate about. And yeah, so, and I think that we illustrated as well, hopefully in this conversation, about how when you are just enough for yourself, you can allow that other person to shine.
Ooh, yes. That's the biggest thing. Yep.
Yeah, so beautiful. How can people get a hold of you, my sister? And is there
Well,
anything I didn't ask you that you also wanted to talk about?
oh
Pitch, how
no.
can people work with you? All that kind of magical stuff.
So I'm mostly on Instagram, which is my name, Laila, Laila.L.Taylor. And then my website, which is lailataylor.com. I do offer sessions and mentorship one-on-one, and then memberships as well if you're interested in diving into like your spiritual abilities and getting with the community and doing readings for fun. And I've had people take that and they're opening up their own businesses. So it's really awesome. But that's how you would mostly get in contact with me.
I love it. Well, thank you so much. I'll put a link to your stuff as well in the show notes. And something tells me you're just going to be a reoccurring guest a couple times a
Yeah.
year. So let's just keep that
I
going.
want that. I was like,
Yes.
there's so much more we could talk about. I love this.
Yes, exactly. Well, I can't wait for our next conversation. Thank you.
Yes. Thank you for having me.